Coming up on 2.5 Geeks, we're short a geek, but don't fear. Marco Chiappetta is here, and he's going to explain lots of things, like the Ouya, the HTC EVO 4G LTE, and he has a horde of graphics cards that we need to talk about. Coming right up.
The bar has been set wicked fast. It rocked in the benchmarks. We're going to up the ante a little bit.
Processing power, I kind of understand this.
Welcome to 2.5 Geeks. You might notice that, hey, aren't you short half a geek? Or not half a geek, I'm half a geek. Aren't you short one geek? Yes. That's okay, though. We're turning up our geek meters. I'm going to be 1.25 geeks. How about you, Marco?
You're going to make me do math on the fly, and it's just not going to happen. Okay. But I will take up the slack, I promise.
I appreciate that. We're trying out stuff. How's it going, Marco? How's your week been? It's been a long time since we've been on the show. It's been really busy. Yep. And I think Dave's on special assignment somewhere like in Moscow undercover as some kind of agent. But I think I just was covered.
Things are good, yeah. It's just been a little nuts. I've had a good week, a little bit of sunburn. It's really hot in my office right now, so I'm probably going to be a little shinier by the end of the podcast, but no complaints.
No complaints, that's good. Let's talk about a Kickstarter project that got people super excited over the past couple of weeks. It's got a strange name, but thankfully there's all these pronunciation guides. We're going to be talking about the Ouya. That's right. That's what they hope you say when you saw this product. I believe it's an Android-based game console, $99. It's over $4 million in funding already. They only needed $950,000, and they made it. Marco, what do you think? What's going on here?
So it's kind of funky. You already mentioned all the salient points. As most of the people watching this probably know, Kickstarter is a great medium for smaller business or upstart businesses to try to raise money. It's basically, crowdsourced fundraising. And the folks working on the Ouya project, they wanted to create an inexpensive console that could run all of these Android games that are already available. And the console would be hopefully around $99. It would have a game controller. It's based on NVIDIA's Tegra 3 SoC. The presentation looked great, and people went nuts on Kickstarter. I believe it's been the most successful Kickstarter yet. And as of the last time I checked it, and you mentioned it was over $4 million, even though they needed a fraction of that. I think they were requesting less than $1 million. But I'm kind of dubious on this thing. I sat and I thought about it for a second. I said, why are they making hardware? All of the hardware they mentioned, we all have in our pocket already. We all have it in our tablets already. Why not create some sort of device to just leverage what we have and integrate, an HDMI output and a game controller? So I don't know. I mean, you really only need a 10-foot interface to access the Android games and the controller, and you have the same thing. So I don't know. Now that it's gotten so much attention, people are sort of souring on the idea. I'm not sold on it. I don't know. What do you think?
See, now the reason why I don't compare it necessarily to a phone or a tablet right away is because phones and tablets have become so locked down, so difficult to upgrade. And one of the things about the Ouya that I've read is that you can take one screwdriver to it. One screw pops off the actual the casing, and you're able to hack this device. There are soldering points, known points, things that you can do to the hardware that you can't with the phone. I mean, you could bust open a Samsung Galaxy S3, but good luck trying to find ports or areas on the motherboard to mess with. I think that it has the option of bigger things. A lot of the things that people are talking about is the hackability of the device. At $99 with an HDMI port instead of some like MHL port or some micro HDMI or whatever other ports, I think that's one of the reasons why it captured a lot of people's imagination. Yeah. My big fear for the device is lack of games, because sure, you leverage Android games, but that's built for touchscreen devices, and even with a touchpad, I don't know if that's necessarily going to translate to the big screen. What do you think?
I think some games would translate and some wouldn't, and it really depends how they design the controller. You've used a Roku before, right?
Yes, I have.
So like the Roku controller, you can kind of sort of simulate touch with movement. If their controller did that along with having a D-pad, I think you could sort of make it work across a really wide range of games. But the things that you mentioned about the hackability, I just think the audience would be so small for that. You already have things like Raspberry Pi and other, well, not many other, but there will be other devices out there as well. I don't know. It's kind of a risky thing to start. I have a feeling that $4 million is going to evaporate, and this thing's never going to see the light of day.
Wow, that's bold words. I think it will come out. The other thing is there's about 40,000 backers, and that means that's the thing. Like, it's appealing to a fringe group, and 40,000 people. if you imagine a game console that sold 40,000 units, you're thinking like less than the Dreamcast, and that was an unmitigated failure. Okay, so you got to put this into perspective. 40,000 people is not a lot of people. The Xbox 360 sold millions of units. Same for the PS3. A lot of people are talking about Nintendo being dead because they only sold several million versions of the 3DS. 40,000 might not be enough to get the developers in hand. Without extra money, if they incentivize developers to make stuff for their console, I think then they have a fighting chance. But I think right now it's a fringe device, and I don't know. I think it'll happen. I'm just hoping because I love lots of ideas.
I don't want it to fail. I don't know. I'm just dubious.
You are being cautious. I'll call it cautious optimism.
Okay, there you go.
Let's talk about a device that's actually out. Probably one you could go spec for spec against the Ouya, the HTC EVO 4G LTE running on the Sprint network. Now, one of the things about this device is that it runs again on the Sprint LTE network. And Marco, how robust is that network?
It is non-existent. It's being worked on, and I think that some cities may have turned on yesterday, or they're going to turn on this week. But it's fledgling. The Sprint is just starting to build out their LTE network, so they have a ton of work to do before the network is the draw for this phone. But the real exciting thing with the phone is it's basically the 1X for Sprint. You have a 1.5 gigahertz dual-core Snapdragon S4 and all the goodness that provides. 16 gigs of storage, a gig of RAM, a really nice 4.7-inch 720p screen. And like the previous EVOs, or I think it was the previous before the current model, it's got the awesome kickstand built into the frame. So that's an awesome little feature where you can stand the phone up and consume content without having to hold it with your hand. In our testing, it proved to actually be a really nice phone. The network scores, we couldn't test it on Sprint's LTE network, as I mentioned, because it's not turned on. But on Sprint's 3G network, decent speeds, but the phone itself, as far as its processing and graphics capabilities, it's a really nice phone. It actually edged out the HTC One X that I tested a few weeks back.
Now, for those of you watching who are snickering about a kickstand, I want you to not snicker about that. If you've been stuck in an airplane, you try to figure out how to get your phone to just sit up there, you're taking your cup of ice and trying to hold it behind there and hope that the thing doesn't fall over. Trust me, that little design element is actually really cool. But the thing about this device, I think it's a 4.7-inch screen. It's an LCD, though. They didn't go Super AMOLED for some reason. How is the display on this thing? I mean, because AMOLED's really hot. That's something that the Galaxy, I believe, the S3 has, and people love that screen. Is this screen as good?
It's a tough call. I think if you were to really examine it, you'd probably say no. But it's a super LCD, super makes all the difference. It is very bright, very viewable outdoors. Colors are perhaps more accurate than the Super AMOLED. I think the vast majority of people, if you went and grabbed this phone and looked at it, you would not have any problems with the screen, even if you were side by side with the Galaxy S3. Maybe it doesn't look quite as vibrant, but some people don't like the extra vibrancy of the Super AMOLED. So I wouldn't call the display the Super LCD display a detriment at all. It's probably Samsung's nicest device on their network right now, and even though you don't get LTE right away, if you're stuck under contract for a couple of years, you probably will, and I think you'd be happy with the performance of the phone. I've switched from a Samsung Galaxy S2 to an HTC One X temporarily, and I thought I wouldn't like the One X because it's you can't open it up, can't change the battery, no micro SD card slot. I'm not missing it, and I'm really liking the speed of the phone. And this guy ended up being a little faster, so pretty nice device, if you ask me.
I think you accidentally said Samsung network. I think you got a lot of these things in your brain, which is fair. It's the Sprint network, I believe. And it's on the Sprint network. One of the things about HTC that I've noticed is that for a while they were the top dog in Android devices. Samsung's taken over in that. Do you think that HTC, with this new reinvigorated One line, that's what the EVO's based on, the EVO, there's not the EVO, excuse me, the One X and the One S, and they're all out there on different carriers. Do you think these devices is what's going to make HTC the top dog again, or is that something Samsung's already got?
I think it's going to be very tough for HTC to take down Samsung. Samsung is just rocking lately. Everything from their devices to their commercials, I think, have been very good. So no, I don't think it's going to be enough to catapult HTC ahead of Samsung. However, I think if you took a room full of 100 people and had, everybody hold the S3 and everybody hold a 1X. The 1X is a pretty nice phone. The industrial design is probably better than the S3. It's just when you add up all the little incremental extra features that the S3 has, I think it's going to win more people over.
Well, nobody cares about that. Everybody wants a Nokia Windows Phone, right? Nobody cares.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Of course, that's the way it's going. Sorry about that dig. I had to do that. It's in my contract.
You know what? You say that as a dig, but did you see the Office announcement today from Microsoft?
I did see the Office. So Microsoft introduced Office 2013, and I downloaded it to my PC, so I need to play with that myself.
Yeah, so during the demo, man, I think it was really cool. The way that they're, by default saving to SkyDrive. I forget the president of Office's last name, but during the demo, he saved a document right from his Samsung tablet, grabbed a Nokia Windows Phone, opened it right up in Office, all completely seamless. I know that's not technically a new idea, but for non-tech savvy people to be able to access their Office documents from their desktop, tablet, and phone without thinking, I think it's a big deal. Okay, that's out of the way.
I'm going to go right back onto that point because I think Stephen Elop, the head of Nokia, used to be at Microsoft Business Unit, so he's probably loving that idea.
Yeah.
Except he's got a dead-end phone, so good luck with that, guys. It's really, anyway, that you can hear my rants and raves on Tech News Today at twit.tv if you feel like listening to me going, why, guys? Come on. Speaking of why, Intel loves them Ultrabooks. They decided that Ultrabooks are the wave of the future. They go thin, small, and we're going to actually, while we're doing thin and small, we're going to do a widening of the definition of the Ultrabooks, including the new Dell Inspiron 14Z Ultrabook, which, if you look at it, it's kind of pushing the line on an Ultrabook. It's got a large screen, about 14 inches. I think it's a little hefty. It's a plus-sized model, so to speak, compared to the other Ultrabooks. Marco, can you tell me a bit about what makes this laptop not a little different than the other Ultrabooks?
I can tell you a lot of what makes it different. So I first saw this guy weeks and weeks ago, actually, before we reviewed it. I met with Dell in New York City. And Dell's, the Inspiron line kind of covers a wide range of, historically covers a wide range of notebooks. Some of them big clunky, some of them were smaller and more sleek. I think they nailed it with the 14Z personally. I'm not the one that reviewed it for the site, but in my opinion, when I was holding it and play with it, I think it's really nice. So as you mentioned, it is an Ultrabook. You're talking 4.12 pounds for the model we tested, so not the lightest Ultrabook, but it's not going to break your shoulder either. Less than an inch thick, 0.83 inches thick at its thickest point. The model we looked at had a Core i5 3317U processor. It's got, see, this is what's cool also, integrated Intel graphics, but also had an AMD Radeon 7570 GPU, so discrete graphics in there. 8 gigs of RAM, 14-inch screen, 500 gig hard drive, 500 gig 5400 RPM drive, but it's paired to a 32 gig mSATA SSD cache, and then all of the extra goodies that you'd expect, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, Ethernet, all that stuff is in there.
So it actually has a mechanical hard drive paired with a SSD, but it also has a tray-loading DVD player, or I don't know if it's even a burner, probably is. What about the idea of throwing it's got a lot of storage, okay? But it has a spinning hard drive. I find this a little strange to be on the Ultrabook definition. Is that something that makes this laptop stand out more? Because a lot of the other ones are maxing out at maybe 256 gigabytes of SSD entirely, because space is really expensive once you start getting bigger than that.
So that's the trade-off, and thanks for stealing another one of the points I was going to make later about the DVD drive, but that's cool. So what you mentioned about the storage is true. You get tons of storage for an Ultrabook, 500 gigs, but with the mSATA cache, in many circumstances, you end up with similar performance than a straight-up SSD. Once the SSD cache has cached all of your most commonly used bits of data, it's all running right off the SSD. It's super responsive, super fast. However, the first time you're accessing data, the first time you're copying something to the drive, the first time you're running an app, you're limited to the speed of the hard drive. So for some users and in many circumstances, you are gonna feel that performance detriment that the slow hard drive brings. But as you use the machine and it learns your usage patterns and more things get cached, it kind of goes away. The advantage is it's cheaper to have that smaller SSD. This particular model we looked at is only $899, which is really good for an Ultrabook with the kind of styling and the features that this has. Plenty of memory, plenty of storage, discrete GPU as well. Really nice machine.
So what about that DVD, the thing I stole from you? What would you like to discuss about the?
Just the fact that it's there. I don't think many people would use it. I don't remember the last time I used physical media to install anything, but it's there, and most Ultrabooks don't have that ability. So, you know, if you have somebody that wants to archive something to the optical discs or just has older software that they want to be able to access, you can easily without getting an external drive.
Monster Scripe, I'm going to say it now. 1366 by 768 resolution, is that correct? On a 14-inch display?
Yeah, that's kind of But yes, there are higher-end models, and you can spring for a higher-res screen, but the one we tested was the more affordable setup.
That's been driving me crazy. I mean, a lot of these notebooks are very similar in design and in capability, and a lot of them are cheaping out on that display, and I guess that's making the cost come down. But I'm pretty sure they're like the ASUS ZenBook UX31 cost about $1,000, and they crammed in a high-res display. This is starting to drive me a little mad. It's like, why? Why not throw in the nicer display?
If it's up to me, it would have the nicer display. I'm one of the people that can appreciate that ultra high res screen. I also know tons of people looking for an affordable thin and light notebook. When they see that ultra high res and how small everything looks, it's kind of a turnoff. So I can kind of see where they're going. I'm not going to completely ding Dell. If it was up to me, I would love something higher res, but I understand why they're doing it.
All right. Well, I hope Ultrabooks do a little bit more to make themselves differentiated from each other, because right now, very similar. I know the Dell's got some interesting style cues. It's gone with a rounded design. Doesn't get caught in a laptop bag like those other super square ones that are like, hey, I'm going to get caught in your bag. Like, that's really helpful. I appreciate what Dell's doing with this. And the design, by the way, notice nobody said it looks like a MacBook Air. Nobody, because it doesn't.
Well, yeah, a little too big. But, it's really a nice machine. I was impressed when I first saw it. The design language is really nice. For the price point, beautiful, beautiful notebook.
Speaking of beautiful, there were these photos. They were on HotHardware. It looked like millions of dollars worth of graphics cards. Now, granted, there were only 5, but I believe 3 of them were the GTX 680. Is this, Marco? What were you doing apart from just staring at what you had? This pile, this pyramid of amazingness. What did you do with these devices?
So I did what you would expect. I plugged them in. I tested their performance. I tested their power consumption. I tested their temperatures, and I tested their noise output. And I told everybody what I thought. The GTX 680, when it first came out, was the fastest single GPU out there. AMD sort of responded with the 7970 gigahertz edition a few weeks ago, and you could make an argument that it retook the performance crown. But this roundup that I put together was of every card in it was a custom GeForce GTX 600 series card. They were all factory overclocked, and the overclocked 680s were definitely faster overall than the 7970 gigahertz edition. And you ended up with some really fast cards. The fastest overall, I'm going to hold it up because people need to get a sense of scale of these things. I have a huge melon. I'm a big guy. I'm 6'2", 280 plus pounds, big giant noggin. And this is what the ASUS 680 looks like next to it. This thing dwarfs my head. That's a feat right there.
Now,
triple slot wide, 2 fans, just a giant video card here.
Now, there is a slimmer ZOTAC one, only uses up 2 backplates, but that's also triple wide because it's got all kinds of cooling systems, because these are overclocked, so they're going to run. I mean, they don't run hot, do they? I mean, I'd imagine that they probably use up more power than the stock.
Well, yeah, they do. So the ASUS, Gigabyte, even I believe the MSI card, they all have custom VRMs on them that are supposedly more efficient. But when you really get down to it, it's the speeds of the GPU and memory that sort of dictate power consumption the most. And as you'd expect, the highest clocked cards, which were the ZOTAC and the ASUS cards, did have the highest power consumption. But you're talking, sort of minimal differences. At idle, a couple of watts, virtually non-existent. Under load, the highest power consumption was the ASUS card I just picked up at 419 watts for the whole system. And a stock GeForce GTX 680 was 387 watts. So minimal difference. That really shouldn't be anybody's concern. But what the advantage of the overclocking, of course, is performance. And if you don't mind these large coolers, what you end up with is a card that's actually cooler running and quieter than a stock card, even though it's faster. The disadvantage is you're going to sacrifice 2 slots. It's so wide that 2 adjacent slots are going to be unusable. For some people, I don't think it's an issue. I personally like the dual slot form factor. You know, the Gigabyte card I looked at, it was a little bit louder, but the performance was basically there. You don't have to sacrifice that extra slot. If you don't need the slot, fine. You want something quieter and faster, the ASUS card is an absolute monster. Sort of kind of a bit of preference there. But killer cards all around, and my favorites were probably the MSI GTX 670 I looked at and the Gigabyte GTX 680. I say that, picking at all the different data points, they were all really nice cards.
It looks absurd. Can you hold that thing up one more time? Because
Sure.
It just looks like you could use that as a defensive blunt object. You could hurt somebody with that.
I want to see if I have any here. Let me hold up a cell phone next to it. Like here's a big graphics card. And here's a huge cell phone.
That's a 4.7 inch. Is that the?
This is the HTC One X. Yeah, 4.75. Right. I don't remember exactly, but look at that thing. This thing is awesome.
That is incredible. I don't know what to say other than okay. Well, you obviously can't put that graphics card in that phone. I guess not, unless you're some kind of crazy modder. I guess you could. Now I got my brain going. But so any weird surprises? I mean, the thing is, they're all based. Well, not all. 3 of them were based on the 680, 2 on the 670. Was there anything that you found that you didn't expect?
Not really. So some of the companies spend all of their overclocking focus just overclocking the GPU. Others, like ZOTAC in particular, in this roundup, they put a lot of effort into overclocking the memory. So you'll find that one card is faster for X number of games because its GPU is clocked higher, while another is faster for another group of games because it has more memory bandwidth. So you should really, depending on the games that you like to play, find out if they're more GPU or memory bandwidth bound, and then make a decision that way to get the fastest card for your buck, because there's only, $30-40 separating the cheapest from most expensive GTX 680 in this roundup.
Is there any other things we should know, some happenings around HotHardware, Marco?
There is. So we're working on the next contest. I'm itching to build a system, but we haven't pulled together all the parts. I'm going to try to make that happen for everybody. I haven't built a high-end system in a while, so I want to do that. We also have a line on a couple of tablets, but the details haven't been hammered out. Perhaps the most interesting thing to me, and maybe you guys in the future, we have a new revision of HotHardware coming that is absolutely beautiful. We are going to make the site so much faster and cleaner and crisp that I think you're all really going to like it. But for now, that's all under wraps. I can't show you anything, and I can't announce anything yet.
I will definitively say this: the site will not be entirely in Flash. It's not going to be like some restaurant menu. I bet you this is not going to all be in a PDF. But I will guarantee animated GIFs of walking Felix.
And Cold Fusion is in the running. No, just
fantastic. Kidding. I think that's what it's going to be. Obviously, if you guys want to know about the upcoming contest details, or you want to see the redesigned HotHardware, which is coming soon, there's a good place you could go for that. I would think it'd be HotHardware.com. It's a really great site. And if you're wondering about the stuff we talked about today, also on HotHardware.com. Everything we talked about is at HotHardware.com. Or you can go around the web. There's twitter.com/HotHardware. There's facebook.com/HotHardware. There's dig.com/HotHardware. Or youtube.com/HotHardwareVids. Is there anywhere else? Yes, Google+. Do a search for HotHardware because Google still doesn't give out vendor URLs. So we're waiting on that. So I'm actually very curious about the redesign. I'm going to twist some arms off camera to find out exactly what it looks like.
Yeah, I'll send you the link as soon as we're done chatting.
I like the pretty. I like all the prettiness. I think that does it for us this week. Thanks for stopping by. We might even be back with Dave, or not. I don't know. He could be trapped in his mission. So thanks for stopping by.